I'm Grace Villeneuve, and I'm doing my midterm on the internment of Japanese Americans.
Minutemen determined that all Japanese within the coastal area should move inland. Immediately, the Army began mapping evacuation areas and for a time encouraged the Japanese to leave voluntarily. The trouble for the voluntary evacuees soon threatened in their new locations, so the program was quickly put on a planned and protected basis. Thereafter, the American citizen Japanese and Japanese aliens made plans in accordance with orders. Notices were posted. All persons of Japanese descent were required to register. They gathered in their own churches and schools, and the Japanese themselves cheerfully handled the enormous paperwork involved in the migration. Civilian physicians made preliminary medical examinations. Government agencies helped in 100 ways. They helped the evacuees find tenants for their farms. They helped businessmen lease, sell, or store their property. This aid was financed by the government, but quick disposal of property often involved financial sacrifice for the evacuees.
Okay, this documentary is a really good example of the propaganda that was being produced by the American government. And it was used to justify the United States interring its Japanese American citizens. And with the happy Disney music playing in the background, I'm not really sure if it can hear it, but you might assume that the Japanese Americans were living a happy life in these internment camps, when the reality of this is they were really not so cheerful to leave their livelihoods, their homes, the better education that they could have had, and their future in general. And you may or not be surprised to know this, but Disney actually was going bankrupt, or like they were about to go bankrupt at this time. So they were, the U.S. government hired them to produce these films and the music in it and stuff. And yeah, so the summary of the Japanese American internment by the U.S. government. So the internment of Japanese Americans refers to the relocation and incarceration of approximately 120,000 Japanese Americans, 2/3 of whom were U.S. citizens, and the other 1/3 being legal immigrants. During World War II, this policy was implemented in 1942 following the attack on Pearl Harbor. These innocent individuals were forcibly removed from their homes on the West Coast and placed in internment camps under harsh conditions. This was widely recognized as a grave violation of civil rights and is considered a dark chapter in American history. Explanation for the internment. So, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, there was a national security concern, which led to panic and hysteria by the American public because of the potential sabotage and espionage by Japanese Americans. People were on edge, and the government's response was influenced by this. There was also a racial prejudice and long-standing anti-Japanese sentiments. It played a significant role in the decision to intern Japanese Americans. Many Americans held prejudiced views about Japanese immigrants and their descendants, viewing them as inherently untrustworthy due to their ethnicity. After the bombing, this added fuel to the fire. So there's a lot of similarities between the situation and the book Night. So both of them were encouraged to leave, and they were forcibly migrated. They were classified as enemy aliens, dehumanizing them, but enemy aliens is also really devising in a way too, because they weren't considered American, they were just different than everyone else. But also there was a curfew installed, which you might remember in the beginning of the book Night, and just like the Jews, Japanese Americans were assigned a identification number, although not tattooed. Japanese Americans were even further dehumanized by having their bank accounts frozen. They were forced to leave their livelihoods, their homes, in the name of a cheerful sacrifice. The internment of Japanese Americans was driven by wartime hysteria, racism, and the fear of sabotage by Japanese Americans. It was fueled by prejudice, and discriminatory government policies, while in night the cruelty they faced was the result of Nazi ideology. However, the result of what they went through was partially because of propaganda. And these are my sources.